Hey everybody, welcome to Night's Report presented by Lexus. Great to have you with us today. Dave Gosher, Dan Duva, Gary Lawless, Mike McKenna, all in the house. We hope everyone is staying safe and healthy during this quarantine time, and great to have you tune in today on Night's Report. We have a special guest right off the bat, one of our favorites, Jesus Lopez, the play-by-play voice of the Golden Knights on our Spanish station, ESPN Deportes, joining us here from the Golden Gate Bridge. Hey, Jesus, I thought, didn't you hear we're supposed to quarantine? Maybe that's just a view from your condo or something in San Francisco. How are you, my man?
Very good. Hi, everyone. Very good. It's just, it came with the application, so I think it looks really good.
It's expensive real estate.
I think you should just tell people you get a nice condo in San Francisco you're spending your time at.
No. I wish. That's one of my favorite places to go. But yeah, no. How you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Well. Yeah, excellent.
Great, thank you. And more importantly, how are you doing? We're all in the same boat here, right? It's been a month since the NHL season got put on pause. What have you been doing to pass the time?
Well, you know what? I'm going crazy, to tell you the truth. It's hard. After being with so much activity all the time, doing a lot of spots and also doing the Vegas Golden Knights, of course, the play-by-play, and all of a sudden everything stops. All of a sudden, I hear like voices talking to me, very strange, and it's. I've been doing videos for our community, just asking people to stay at home with this little guy right here, and. It's been fun because I'm always looking a way for serving my people and let them know what's going on and do the things that are right now to prevent the coronavirus. The coronas, I don't mind. The virus, I do.
Right.
But and I also spend a lot of time cooking. I love to cook and listening to music. I started to read again because that's something that I really enjoy, but I stopped for a while reading. I had 3 books that I didn't finish, so I'm on the last one now. So it really helps. It just keep my mind busy. It's no easy task when you're so used to be so active, and all of a sudden everything is just like put it on hold. It's dramatic, but hey, that's life. I want to be alive, so. Yeah. I have to be in quarantine.
Jesus, we all know, and you are the most interesting of the entire broadcast crew. You've got so many interests. You just named a few of them, but I think that some folks, aside from, of course, the Golden Knights play-by-play, might not be as familiar with your background, with some of the programs that you do. That's your prop there, and I don't know his name, but you are a ventriloquist.
Yes, I am.
I would love to know how you got started in ventriloquism, and it's amazing your versatility with the voices that you do. How did you start that?
Well, that's an easy one. He's crazy. That's how. Yeah, it's just, he's crazy. You are. I'm not. You are. I'm not. You are. No, I'm not. Don't believe this guy. It's just trying to keep my mind busy all the time. But yeah, I started doing ventriloquism when I was in Mexico. And I was Radio Universidad de Guadalajara. That was the radio that I was on. And that was the radio when I learned a lot of things about what I do. But also, well, my family has been in the pizza business for 40 years, so I love to cook. I did some shrimp lasagna last night. They're really good, and with asparagus and a very nice creamy sauce. So I just keep my mind busy. And of course, my kids, they come by. I have a 27-year-old daughter. She's a psychologist. So I spend a lot of time talking to her right now. Thank God she's a psychologist. And my son, who is 20 and is going to UNLV. So yeah, it's keeping my mind busy. And also I have a friend of mine that comes by and we play chess. And that helps a lot. It helps a lot, definitely.
Well, last night or a couple days ago, my daughter said to me, are we going to be able to have our Cinco de Mayo party? And I was, I said, I don't think so, sweetheart. But Jesus was the star. You guys, Dan and Dave, Mike, you weren't with us yet, but Dan and Dave were at the party. And what you don't realize is there's a lot of preparation. And I would be at La Bonita, one of the grocery stores in Las Vegas that specializes in Mexican products. And I would phone Jesus and say, hey, what about this? And he would, so he was I had my phone taped to my head while I was at La Bonita trying to figure, and I was there 2 or 3 times looking for different items. And then the day of the party, we're preparing the food, and Shane brought his frozen margarita machine, and we've got lots of good cocktails going. Jesus, first of all, you showed us a special drink that had like 7-Up, tequila, and what was that drink, first of all?
Not 7-Up, it was Squirt.
Oh, Squirt, that's right.
Squirt, yeah, with lime juice and salt, sea salt, and white tequila. White tequila was, it's called a Paloma. It's really, really good. Paloma is a dove.
Well, the doves were flying that night, that's for sure.
I know, yeah. Eric Dozy, you really enjoyed them, yes.
Percent agave, yeah.
Then I started to make the meat for the tacos, and first Jesus kind of gently looked over my shoulder. Then I got a little bit of sharing the oven space, and then finally I got the Gordie Howe, and was removed from the front of the grill entirely, and Jesus took over. But that was one of the first times we'd worked with you a lot, but that was the day when you kind of held court, told your life story, and you were cooking for us. That's when you became, as Dan said, the most interesting man in the Golden Knights broadcast.
Thank you very much. I don't think I am, but I want to take the chance. I want to take this chance to tell you it was a great party, by the way. Thank you for having me over, Gary. It was a great party, and let's hope to do that again soon, even if there's no Cinco de Mayo on it, because it was really, really nice just to spending time with you guys. But I wanna take the opportunity to thank all of you, Dave, Shane, Dan Duva, Gary Lawless. I'm going to tell you something that I think about yourself, Gary, if you don't mind. And this is something that you don't know, Gary.
Good thing he's sitting down.
But I'm going to tell you something I think about yourself. Now, between periods on a hockey game, I always go and get my cup of tea for my throat. It helps a lot, especially when there's a lot of goals. It helps. So this is what I thought about Gary when I met him. And he doesn't know, but I'm preparing my tea, and I always listen to Gary Lawless because the thought that I had was he doesn't speak English. This guy doesn't speak English. This guy speaks hockey. He's the voice of hockey. I mean, when he talks about hockey, it's just like you're watching the rink. It's really nice. So I think it has been really easy for me to learn the sport because of you guys. I mean, I'm always asking Dan Duva, I'm always asking Gary Lawless, I'm always asking Dave and Shane, and it's a great team, it's a great family, and now you meet young guys like Mike McKenna and Darren. They're always ready to assist you on any doubt that I have. And you guys made it really easy for me. So thank you. I want to take the opportunity to thank you guys. You're so professional and made it really easy for me. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, very kind of you. We're very lucky to have
you. And I'll tell you this, Jesus, here's to you. You're the one that listens to Gary because we don't.
That's pretty apparent because often during Lawless and Owen, the follow-up question that Dave gives me is from Mars. So it's clear that you're not listening.
Well, it makes it so easy, Jesus, though, because we talk about you being the most interesting man we think in the world at times, but it's because we just like being around you. You've got plenty of stories to share with us. We've talked cooking all the time, your ceviche that we still have to have the opportunity to make together. But what I'm curious about for you, and it goes along with what you were saying, how, we're all learning from each other too, and asking us questions about hockey and learning the sport. I'm curious how you really found your voice as a broadcaster in hockey, because you have a very distinctive call that everybody just gravitates towards. It's not just your goal call, it's your inflection, it's the way you go about your business. So, how did you really come about finding the voice to call hockey?
You know what? I said this story in an international interview with the NHL, NHL.com, I believe it was, during the Stanley Cup. When I first had the chance to get the gig, get this job, I didn't know much about hockey, to tell you the truth. I just went to some games to see the Kings in LA because my brother-in-law, he had these season tickets for the Kings in LA. And it was a big thing that Wayne Gretzky was playing for them, and the best player in the NHL for a lot of people. So I was looking for references to, in Spanish, of course, references in Spanish about hockey, and there wasn't nothing. And I was like, I need to know, something. And all of a sudden, this Goofy cartoon pumps up. And there's Goofy playing hockey. It's called Goofy Homicide. This cartoon, it was in Spanish. It was translated by a guy from Colombia that used to do play-by-play in soccer. So they hired him. Disney hired this guy to do the translation. And when I heard that guy, I was like, that's the soul of hockey. That's the base on hockey play-by-play. So I did a couple of demos, and I gave him to my boss, Tony Bonici, and he said, no, I don't like it. There's something missing. So I made probably 5 demos for Tony Bonici, the general manager for Lotus Broadcasting. And then he said, you know what, why don't you do your soccer stuff? Because I did soccer for a long time and box for a long time. So I started calling the goals soccer style, and it was Tony Bonici who gave me that advice. But then I was talking to Dan Duva, and he was giving me this explanation about it. And at the end, he told me this great advice. Just make sure that the people can listen to your smile when you're talking. That's what Dan Duva told me. And then the person in charge of programming, the general manager of programming, his name is John Griffin from Lotus Broadcasting. John Griffin told me these 3 steps: learn the sport, let it grow within yourself, and then tell the story the best you can. That's what John Griffin told me.
Great advice.
But he looked at me very serious, and he was like, are you really up for this? Because we were inside the T-Mobile Arena. We were with Dan Duva at the moment. Yeah. And he was really concerned about what we was going to deliver in Spanish. John Griffin is a very, very careful guy about those things. And that's what he told me. Learn the sport, let it grow within yourself, and then tell the story the best you can.
Well, I've got to say that even though I'm certainly far from fluent in Spanish, but it doesn't take a fluent Spanish speaker to hear the joy and the passion in your broadcast. So that's what I'm sure that the people who hear your play-by-play and understand your words more than I do appreciate it even more than the rest of us. But I think that's the key to all of the work that we do. And we hear in your voice that smile, and we know there's not a place in the world you'd rather be than at that game.
No, it's well, first of all, I really love hockey. I mean, the sport is a beautiful sport. It offers a unique picture. It's a skating. Yeah. It's artistic. And all of a sudden, you see those fights with Ryan Reeves, and it turns really serious, and it's just too much physical contact, so much adrenaline. You can feel it. You just can feel it, and it's so easy for the hockey to grow within yourself because it's pure passion, and it's a beautiful sport because of the picture that you get out of it. Like that. William Carlson goal, y sale William Carlson por izquierda, cerrando la portería, se va solito en el mano a mano, entra las piernas, dispara, goal! I mean, you cannot hide that passion.
I'm ready to jump out of my chair. I'm so excited right now.
That was
Hey,
a beautiful goal.
It's great because I was going to ask you before we let you go to give me a goal call, but you just did it. This is unbelievable.
Well, there it is.
Well, look how your background played into doing hockey, though. You've done boxing, you've done soccer. You can hear that come out again in your voice that you've developed yourself, melding those previous experiences into what you do. That's what makes it so unique and awesome.
Mike, it's an honor, Mike. Let me tell you, when Jed, our technician, opens the mic, it's a magical moment because I forget about who I am, and I just become the voice of the Vegas Golden Knights in Spanish, and it's a huge compromise. We are introducing this beautiful sport to a community that didn't know much about it, and it's no easy, and I just. If there is no passion on broadcasting, whatever it is, any sort of sport, there has to be passion in it for you to like it. I remember this teacher of mine in Guadalajara. We were broadcasting a soccer game, and all of a sudden, we lost the signal. We lost the signal in the screen. I mean, there was no game, there was no sound, nothing. And this guy kept on narrating out of his imagination, just to keep people entertained, and it was like when you have that kind of talent, I mean, it just flows like that, and I'm working on it. I want to have that. I want to have what I saw on that guy in Guadalajara, because those guys are inspiration. When you listen to guys like Dave Goucher and his excitement and how he interacts with Shane, and that's what I do with Herbert, because Herbert, my partner, the guy that does the color with me, he has a beautiful voice. So he brings me down again, so I can start, leveling up my voice. So you know what I'm talking about, Dan. So it really helps a lot, and it's been a magical trip for me. Hockey, it's been a blessing in my life, definitely.
Well, it's been a blessing for us, Jesus, to have you in our lives, and I'm going to propose a deal. Maybe you and I can trade partners for a game.
Can I get in on that deal? Or?
Yeah, it could be like a three-way trade,
It'll be my honor.
On behalf of Shane, we both have no move clauses, all right?
All right, all right, never mind.
I think I'm going to learn Spanish during the NHL pause just so I can understand your play-by-play, Jesus. That's my next project.
You know what I love, Jesus, is that I don't understand anything until you yell goal, but I just hang in there to hear that part. It's so great.
I like it when you get the vegetables involved and you it's fantastic. It's always sometimes if there's if I have the headset off for a second for whatever reason and there's a goal, I can sometimes feel the press box shake a little bit as you give your goal call. It's pretty good. I love it when we have a big goal and the next day on our social media account, they put your call, Dan's call, and Dave's call all together, and you get to hear that. And we do, in my opinion, we have the best play-by-play voices in the National Hockey League when you combine you three guys together.
Agree.
Well, thanks for that.
Thank you very much.
I just listen to Jesus.
Thank you.
Even though I don't understand a word.
No, that's right. He's carrying the load for the rest of us.
Jesus, thanks so much, my man. Great to see your face after a month here of not being able to see you. So take care, stay safe. Hopefully we'll see you soon.
Enjoy that condo, San Francisco.
It's an honor. Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have fun.
Always great to have Jesus Lopez anywhere, whatever vehicle it might be, here on Knights Report or in person. He is the absolute best. So Dave Goucher, along with Dan Duva, Gary Lawless, Mike McKenna, and of course remaining in quarantine with the NHL season on pause. And Gary, our Golden Knights insider, what's the latest news you're hearing just around the league and where things stand right now in terms of the NHL and where they're at with all of this?
Well, the NHL, first of all, they have extended the self-quarantine for players, team personnel, management, broadcasters for until April 30th. So the self-quarantine will remain in effect. It was supposed to end on April 15th. It's now been extended to April 30th. So that's sort of official news from the NHL. Gary Bettman appeared on CNN with Anderson Cooper recently and said, it was interesting, Anderson Cooper was asking him, what are the chances you'll play? And Bettman, of course, has sort of been on the record as saying that, the virus is kind of in control of where all of this is going to go, and the health and safety of everyone, not just players and team personnel, is first and foremost. He then did say, we are hoping to get to play, and we're preparing for whatever scenario possible. He then said it would probably take 2 to 3 weeks for players to get up to speed and get back into game shape. So that's pretty telling. That's not something that we've really heard prior. So, a training camp of some sort for around 2 weeks is probably something that if hockey is to return, that we would see. Don Waddell, the general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes, revealed that the Hurricanes are working right now. They have a task force internally, and they're working towards 3 scenarios for a return to hockey. And that is one where the team would play in front of no fans, a second one where the team would play in front of a capped number that would fall within the boundaries of social distancing. So kind of imagine 5,000 people spread out inside an NHL arena. And then the third option is that they would be able to play again in front of a full arena. So they're looking at all of those options. It gets really interesting here as we go along and we get closer to you hear politicians talking about reopenings, staggered reopenings. So it gets it gets interesting when you start to think maybe they will play hockey again at some point in time, and how will that look? And there's a lot of options. We've talked about neutral site games only on TV, and I think that earlier on there was a real focus on making sure next season didn't get damaged, and I think that is still in place. But the cancellation of the Olympics and the TV broadcast calendar being open in August, I think that has to be something that the NHL would, if they could safely, if they could fill some of those dates, that would be an opportunity for them. You put hockey on TV tomorrow night and you would get Super Bowl ratings. That has to be something that they're I think secretly hoping that they could achieve.
Yeah, you want to capitalize on it for sure. I mean, touching on the players here, Gary, you said how they're looking at maybe a 2 or 3 week time frame to get ready to play hockey. A lot of that factors into the quality of play. If you go back and 4 or 5 days later you decide, hey, let's drop the puck and go, hey, it could be done. Players will go out and play no matter what, but it's going to look like a glorified beer league out there. You want them to be, in stride and be able to do things that they could previously. 5 days isn't enough for that. 3 weeks, that's too much. You give them 2 weeks, you should be ready to go. But also the fear is injuries too. You can't really replicate what you do on the ice in a summer setting. Nick Foligno said the other day, the Columbus Blue Jackets, said kind of back in a Rocky mentality now, where you're doing push-ups and sit-ups and you're punching the cow in the barn, and you can't replicate skating, So you think about groins, core, all those things that you utilize as players. That's what has to get back into stride to try to minimize that and provide a good quality of play.
Mike, I got a question about that. In a typical offseason, let's say you're on a team that doesn't make the playoffs. What is a normal amount of time that a player might take without any time on the ice before you start getting built up again?
Yeah, well, obviously something like this varies. Some players will take a month off. Some of them will take almost 3 months off. The general consensus, though, amongst players is that you've got to be on the ice at least a month before you go to training camp. That's what they usually feel like they need. Now, there's stories of guys who put everything in their closet or into the garage until 2 weeks before, and they just
especially
play
the old
some hockey. Yeah, Marty Brodeur was famous for it, that he'd keep it in the in the garage until beginning of September ready to come out and win the Vezina every year. But the players do need time to get ready. But the players also have to be cognizant that if they really want the Stanley Cup to be presented, they got to get it moving and do it quickly. They're not going to have the luxury of taking all day long or a long period of time to prepare for that.
Is 2 weeks sound about right?
I think 2 weeks is appropriate. And I mean, I think players, no matter what, got to realize that if you got to kick it into gear here, a week worth of practice and go, if that's what you have to do to get the Stanley Cup presented, I think they take that trade-off. But there's fear, again, the injury factor is what people worry about, but injuries happen no matter what.
And no regular season games, Mike? They go right to the playoffs, do you think?
At this point, looking at everything, it sure seems difficult to factor those in. I just don't know what the right recipe is, whether you're going to roll back games, roll forward, do a play-in. That's all for smarter people than myself to decide. But it sure seems like going straight to playoffs is the most likely scenario.
I've heard 76 games kicked around a lot, and that there's potentially there's a schedule matrix that works for that because when you get all these owners in a room, and listen, we've used Winnipeg as the best example. Like that is a small market team that if you're going to tell them that they played through a lot of schedule pain earlier on, and now they're in a spot where they think they could really make a push and get in, and you're going to tell them that they have no chance at those playoff dates. Like there's those 31 guys that have a say in those board of governor meetings. I'd be shocked if they rolled back. And again, all this will depend on time, but I really think that Drew Doughty said yesterday, if you win if you do play, he said, I don't think we're going to play. And then he said, and even if you do play, it won't really be like winning the Stanley Cup. Well, like if you,
he said it won't be like a real Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, that's come on, man, a real Stanley Cup.
If you roll back to 68, there will be teams that'll, players that'll say, yeah, this is an asterisk for sure.
Right.
We didn't get a fair shot to compete for a playoff spot. So I think that all of this depends on time as well.
Right.
If they can get to 76, I think everyone could kind of go, okay, that makes sense. That's a legitimate regular.
Yeah.
Well, I've got an issue with that because if you're a team that has no hope of making the playoffs, what kind of team is going to show up? Say Winnipeg is playing a meaningful game. If they win, they're in. And you're playing, I don't know their schedule, but the Knights have, say, the Detroit Red Wings. You tell me the Detroit Red Wings are going to put up a legitimate fight, a real NHL team? It would be more of a non-competitive game. So that's silly to me too. I say just start with the playoffs.
Yeah, I've been on those teams before where you knew you were out by Valentine's Day or All-Star break.
Every year. No disrespect to what you're saying, Dan, but Detroit's been eliminated for a long time.
But they've also not played for a month. How hard are those guys going to prepare to get back to NHL shape? At least when they're playing meaningless games, they're still in hockey shape.
Certainly that is an added element, but there are meaningless games towards the end of the season in every professional sport.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So here, a quick kick too, Mike, in terms of Doughty's comments, look, it's not always – every season is not always the same. Look at 94-95, right? Lockout shortened year. Devils win it. I don't hear anyone talking about that, especially Dan Duva, that there should be an asterisk next to that cup.
12-13, another shortened season.
12-13, right? So sometimes for, circumstances outside of the actual games being played, schedules are different. None of the games are different.
And think about what Jonathan Marchessault said. It's just impossible that we don't play for the Stanley Cup. It has to be presented. That's the winner's mentality that they have worked so hard this season. They need that opportunity to win the Stanley Cup.
And there, it's interesting too, though, Mike, there are voices out there, and Doughty said yesterday he doesn't think they're going to play. Brian Burke has said he doesn't think they're going to play. Every scenario we talk about, and I get it. Look, we all love the game. We all want to be back doing what we do on a regular basis. Is it possible that they can't make it safe enough, quick enough, for everyone to come back and salvage some sort of a semblance of a season here, Gary? What do you think?
Well, that's a possibility. And again, I'm not gonna pretend that I know the science better than the scientists. And that's why I think it's great that the NHL is listening. They have doctors, they have scientists on their conference calls. They've employed people, and they're going to listen to those people for sure. But we just can't predict. Like every day you see there's a new way of there are new testing kits and new manners of testing. Like what breakthroughs are going to happen? I would say this, we're talking about, trying to play the playoffs in say July, August, September, and then have an off season. I might get some of that stuff out of the way, like the draft, for example. I might say, you know what? We're going to have the draft in June. We're going to go to the 2005 format where everybody gets a lottery ball. Teams that are, that missed the playoffs, I think they looked over 3 years, and there were, if you'd missed the playoffs over those years and you didn't have a first round pick over those 3 years, you got 3 balls.
Yeah, weighted system, sure.
And then other teams got 2 balls, and then other teams just got 1 ball. I would, I would go to that type of lottery, and I would get the draft, get some of that business out of the way now, so that if the off season has to be, if you could play the season and get into next year by November, and you can buy a week by having the draft in June, I would do that for sure. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, I bet you Gary Bettman has got a list of dates, and there's probably a drop dead date where he says, okay, we got to get the draft out of the way. We're going to go to this format. And he gets on the phone with the Board of Governors and he explains to them, we have to do the draft now to buy us that 4 or 5 days later on. So I need a vote. They have a vote, and then they make an announcement, and there's a virtual draft on June 25th. That's a great day. It's my birthday.
Well, I can add one addendum to this that doesn't even need comment. Free agency is going to be absolute mayhem when it happens, whenever it happens. It's going to be a lead up of no time, and it's going to be like that. And I can't wait to see how that plays out.
Well, we only get logistics. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. A couple of minutes. The other thing I'll say, and then we'll just move on real quick, guys, to wrap things up. The one thing that did catch my ear yesterday that Gary Bettman, and you kind of pointed it out, Gary, he said, really, none of this is in my hands. It isn't, right? It's, you've got to listen to, as you mentioned, the scientists and people that know what they're talking about when it comes to, can we possibly restart this? And paramount among all that is to keep everyone safe and sound. So,
well, that's why I'm glad he hasn't made any grand pronouncement and said we're canceled. Like, I don't see the benefit to that. No. There may come a time when he has to do that, but I'm not there now. I've read a bunch of places. He must cancel. He must cancel. If he's comfortable that his league can mobilize and get things going quickly, and they have the financial capability and wherewithal to keep people working, so that if that moment happens, they can strike. Good for him, I say.
Yeah, hold on to the optimism.
Yeah, they've got time. They certainly have some time.
Yeah. Think about it, guys. Sure. We're 1 month into this. We're talking about events 2, 3, 4 months from now. I know it might feel like we've been quarantined for 3 months, but it's been 1 month.
3 years.
Yeah.
All right, guys, before we go, we've been wrapping these up with a rapid fire, okay? So, yeah. Gary, I don't know if you've seen, this is a phone, an iPhone. You've seen these before. So the question today is, if you were going to have your own emoji, what would your emoji be? Dan, let's start with you. What do you got?
It's pretty easy, as many of you know, and especially Mike, because he came up with the Sicilian soundbite nickname a few years back. But Duva in Italian translates to, in English, of the grape. So for me, having grown up in a family with a grape motif on our furniture, on our glassware, all over the place, there were grapevines. So for Dan Duva of the grape, it is the grapes emoji.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a glass of red wine.
Yeah, but close enough. Same thing.
You're on the way to it.
It's like a before or after kind of picture.
Yeah, Gary, what do you have?
Well, I thought about this a little bit, and I was leaning towards a typewriter because I'm a sports writer by trade, and then I thought, Shane and Dave would get a big kick out of it if I used the iPhone.
I was thinking that too.
as my emoji, because I'm always on the phone. And then, but then I kind of thought Lawless is a pretty distinct name, and there's some conjecture that Captain Tommy Lawless, who crashed his ship on the shores of PEI and was the first Lawless to settle on Canadian soil, was a pirate. So I'm going with the skull and crossbones.
Oh, there you go. I didn't know that about.
I thought we were going to get a police officer because you are the lawman.
Yeah, I didn't know that bit of a Lawless family history.
So,
yeah.
I'm not, what about you, Coach?
Mike? Well, I'll go. So I don't know. Like, I love the red wine. I love music. I try to play the guitar, as I didn't know, Mike, until recently. You try to play too.
Poorly, very poorly.
Yeah. I know where you're coming from.
Different styles.
But I don't know, just because I'm a knucklehead and I always walk around doing this, kissing the gun, I would do the muscle one.
Of course, why not show off? Flaunt it if you got it.
Oh, lack thereof, I'm just saying. So anyway, the gun show would be mine. All right, Mike,
Perfect.
what do you got?
It's already been used. It's the rattlesnake. Pretty simple. I've got Henry, my mug, that hangs out in my stall at the office there, and traveled with me through.
When we saw you in Ottawa a year or two ago, and I saw Henry in your stall, I was just so happy. I was surprised, but yeah, I was just delighted to see that he was still with you.
That coffee mug I got in San Antonio, and it's gone through. It probably went through 12 different cities afterwards. Yeah. It was probably 8 years ago, and I kept it with me in my stall ever since. It was my rink mug, and now it's my office mug.
There you go. It's got a new home.
Yep.
Well, great stuff, guys, and this has been fun to visit with Jesus. We thank him for joining us. He's the absolute best, and we hope everyone stays safe and healthy during this period of quarantine. For Dan, Gary, and Mike, Dave Gosher saying thank you for joining us here. Nice Report presented by Lexus. We'll talk to you again soon.